Hey there. Tonight, we're not just drifting off to sleep. We're stepping into a nightmare, a frozen, fire-lit, mud-soaked nightmare. Not a dream, but a historical reality. The Eastern Front of World War II. Forget what you know about battles in the movies. This wasn't about flags waving in the wind, brave speeches, or clean uniforms. This was about frostbite, starvation, shattered cities, shattered souls. It was the largest and deadliest theater of war in human history, and most people today couldn't survive a single day of it. But tonight, you're going to live through all of it, from the roots that led to this colossal clash, to the mud of Operation Barbarossa, to the snow-covered trenches of Stalingrad, to the scorched ruins of Berlin. We're going to trace it all. The cruelty, the chaos, the cold, and why the Eastern Front wasn't just hard to survive. It was nearly impossible to endure. So go ahead, dim your lights. Let the hum of a fan lull you into stillness. Close your eyes and get comfortable, because what you're about to hear isn't just a history lesson. It's a slow, haunting walk through the deadliest battlefield of the modern world. And by the end, you'll understand why you wouldn't have survived the Eastern Front. The year is 1918. The First World War ends, not with triumph, but with exhaustion. Germany is shattered. The Austro-Hungarian Empire collapses. Russia is gone, its monarchy overthrown, its empire torn apart by revolution and civil war. From the ashes, something new is born. A republic in Germany, a communist state in Russia, and a whole continent breathing heavy with grief. But peace, it doesn't last. Germany signs the Treaty of Versailles, and that treaty, meant to end war, plants the seeds of the next one. Crushed under debt, humiliated, starving. The German people search for someone to blame, and someone to save them. In the East, the Soviet Union rises from the chaos. Lenin dies, Stalin takes power, and he begins to reshape the USSR into a machine, a brutal, paranoid, industrial monster. Millions die in famines, in purges, in gulags. But the factories rise, the Red Army swells, and then, in Germany, a strange little man with a mustache steps out of prison. His name is Adolf Hitler, and his book, Mein Kampf, blames communists, Jews, the Slavs of the East, for Germany's downfall. He dreams of Lebensraum, living space, for the German people. And where does he want it? In the East, Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, the breadbasket of Europe, the oil of the Caucasus, the bones of the Slavs. It's all marked for conquest. By 1939, Hitler seizes Czechoslovakia and signs a shocking pact with Stalin, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a deal with the devil. In secret, they agree to carve up Eastern Europe. Germany takes half of Poland. The Soviets take the other half, plus the Baltics and Bessarabia, but neither man trusts the other. And Hitler, he's already planning the betrayal. The year is 1941. Germany has crushed France. Europe is under Nazi control. Britain is holding out, barely. But Hitler wants more. He looks to the east, to Moscow, to the oil, to the wheat, to the annihilation of the Judeo-Bolshevik threat. And so, on June 22nd, 1941, without warning, Operation Barbarossa begins. 3 million German and Axis soldiers cross the Soviet border. Tanks, trucks, horses, a wall of steel stretching across 1,800 miles. The Luftwaffe bombs Soviet airfields. The Red Army is caught completely off guard. Within weeks, hundreds of thousands are killed or captured. And behind the German lines, the Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing squads. They begin the Holocaust by bullets, murdering Jews, communists, and civilians by the tens of thousands. But this is only the beginning. What follows is a war unlike anything the world has ever seen. And you, dear listener, are about to walk straight into it. The invasion is fast, too fast. In just a few weeks, the Germans push hundreds of miles into Soviet territory. Cities fall like dominoes. Vilnius, Minsk, Smolensk. Entire Soviet armies are encircled and captured. By August 1941, over 3 million Soviet troops have been killed, wounded, or taken prisoner. The German soldiers, confident, efficient, battle-hardened, believe victory is near. But the deeper they go, the more the land seems to stretch endlessly. Forests that never end, rivers that split supply lines, roads that are just mud. The Soviets don't collapse. They stagger, they bleed, but they don't break. In every destroyed village, new resistance is born. Partisans emerge from the woods. Civilians burn bridges behind German lines. Soviet snipers hide in ruined churches. Miners plant explosives in their own tunnels before retreating. And Stalin? He stays in Moscow. He refuses to flee. He gives his infamous order, not one step back. Everything for the front. Everything for victory. Factories are moved thousands of miles east, piece by piece, on railroads. Tanks and rifles are assembled under freezing skies. And then the weather changes. It begins with rain. Relentless, cold, choking rain. The roads become oceans of mud. German tanks sink up to their turrets. Horses die by the thousands. Trucks are abandoned. Soldiers march knee-deep in muck, pulling carts like animals. They call it the Rasputitsa, the time without roads. And just as the mud begins to freeze, winter comes. No one in the Wehrmacht thought they'd still be fighting by winter. They believed the Soviets would surrender in 6 weeks. But now, it's December, and the temperatures fall to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Boots freeze solid, rifles shatter like glass. Men try to dig trenches in frozen ground, and their shovels break. Frostbite spreads, eyelashes freeze shut, noses turn black, hands become useless claws. And the Soviets? They're used to the cold. They wear fur-lined coats. They ski, they ambush. They bring in reinforcements from Siberia, battle-hardened troops with white camouflage. The Germans, exhausted, starving, unprepared, begin to fall back. The blitzkrieg is over. Now begins the slow, grinding war of attrition. And this is only the first 6 months. Thousands freeze to death. Thousands more vanish into the snow. Entire divisions are erased from existence. The front stalls outside Moscow, and what was supposed to be a lightning victory becomes a long, blood-soaked nightmare, one that neither side can wake from. It's now late December 1941. The Germans have made it all the way to the gates of Moscow. They can see the church spires on the horizon. Some officers even write home that the city will fall by Christmas. But they're wrong. Moscow holds. The Soviets have dug in, trenches frozen solid, barbed wire buried beneath layers of snow, snipers in buildings, artillery hidden in pine forests, roads booby-trapped with mines. And behind it all, General Winter, the Soviet Union's most loyal defender. German tanks freeze, engines won't start without fires lit beneath them. Soldiers sleep in snowdrifts, wrapped in straw, waking up stiff and frostbitten. Some don't wake up at all, their boots split open. Fingers turn black. Toes rot off in their socks. And still, they march. No fires, no lights, no warmth, because the Red Army is always watching. And then it happens. The Soviet counterattack, fresh divisions pulled from Siberia, equipped for winter, surge from the flanks. Ski troops slash through German positions at night. Infantry rushes forward under cover of blizzards. T-34 tanks, built tough with wide tracks and diesel engines, plow through snow where German panzers stall. The Wehrmacht is pushed back. Villages once taken at great cost are lost overnight. Commanders beg for reinforcements. Hitler refuses to retreat. He issues a stand-fast order, no withdrawal. And so the Germans stay and freeze and die. The frozen corpses pile up, locked in the positions they died in, some still clutching rifles, some staring blankly, mouths open, eyes full of frost. They are buried by snow, not by comrades. There is no time to mourn. Back in Berlin, the Nazi leadership realizes this won't be easy. But they still believe in victory. They still believe the Soviets will break. They haven't seen what's coming. Because now the war isn't just a conquest, it's personal. It's revenge. The Red Army has tasted survival, and they're not stopping, not until Berlin burns. The year is 1942. The war in the East has changed. It's no longer a fast-moving blitz, no longer a bold gamble. It's a grind, a war of annihilation, a war without mercy. And for civilians caught in the middle, it's hell. Entire villages are razed. If the Germans suspect partisans, they burn it all. Homes, livestock, children. They hang suspected fighters from trees. They shoot priests and teachers. They deport the rest. Soviet partisans fight back, sabotaging railroads, ambushing supply trucks, melting into the woods. But the reprisals are brutal. In Belarus alone, over 5,000 villages are destroyed. In Ukraine and Poland, the Holocaust accelerates. Jews are rounded up and sent to ghettos, then to camps. Others are executed in forests by the Einsatzgruppen, shot in mass graves they were forced to dig. Babies, women, the elderly. Some towns vanish entirely. Nothing left but ash and silence. In the occupied Soviet territories, Millions are starved. Grain is taken. Crops destroyed. Anyone who resists is shot. German planners had expected to feed their armies off the land, but the land itself is scorched. The Soviets retreat and burn everything. A policy called scorched earth, fields, bridges, rail lines, factories, even their own cities. They deny the Germans shelter and leave behind only fire and ruin. For German soldiers, it gets worse. Food is rationed. Ammo is low. The boots still leak. Many begin to lose faith in victory. They've survived the cold, but now they face something even worse: the Soviet summer offensive. In 1942, Hitler sets his sights on the south. He wants Stalingrad, he wants the oil fields of the Caucasus, and once again, he divides his forces. Big mistake. Because in a ruined city by the Volga River, the Red Army is about to make its stand. It's the summer of 1942. The German war machine is still rolling, scarred from winter, yes, but not broken. Hitler is convinced he can still win in the east, but not by taking Moscow. This time his eyes drift south, to oil. He needs fuel. The tanks, the trucks, the Luftwaffe, they all run on it. And in the Caucasus there's oil, rivers of it, fields of it, enough to power the Reich for 100 years. But there's one obstacle in the way: Stalingrad, a long, narrow city clinging to the west bank of the Volga River, named after the Soviet leader himself. Symbolic, strategic, personal. The Luftwaffe comes first. In late August, they drop thousands of tons of bombs. Apartment blocks collapse. Trams melt in the streets. Civilians burn alive in the open. By the end of the first day, Stalingrad is reduced to rubble. And that's exactly what the Soviets want. Because rubble makes for cover. And in that shattered city begins the bloodletting. The Germans enter the city in September. They expect a repeat of Kiev, Minsk, Smolensk. Quick, clinical, overwhelming. What they get is a nightmare. The Soviets fight for every block, every room, every staircase. A single train station changes hands 15 times in one day. There is no front line, only chaos. Snipers dominate. Like Vasily Zaitsev, a Soviet marksman who stalks the ruins, picking off German officers one by one. The Germans send in their own elite marksmen, sniper duels in collapsed factories, broken stairwells, bombed out towers. Machine gun nests are hidden behind walls. Booby traps are wired under floorboards. Molotov cocktails rain down from second-story windows. Soviet troops ambush Germans from sewer grates. Germans clear buildings with flamethrowers and grenades. It's a war in 3 dimensions, up, down, and below. And in the middle of it all, civilians. Thousands remain trapped, hiding in basements, eating wallpaper paste and rats. There is no water, no heat, just smoke, fire, and screams. Hospitals overflow. Amputations are done with no anesthesia. The dead are stacked in courtyards, frozen upright in winter snow. As autumn fades, Hitler orders, "Take the city at all costs." And Stalin replies, "Not one step back." He sends in reinforcements across the river by night. Soldiers cross the Volga under artillery fire. Many drown. Others arrive to the front lines with no rifle, told to take one from the first man who falls. Still, they come. Factory workers turn their own workplaces into fortresses. The Red October steel plant, the Barricadi weapons factory, the tractor factory, still producing T-34s in the middle of combat. Sometimes tanks roll straight off the line into the fight, crewed by volunteers with no training. By November, the Germans control most of Stalingrad. But they've made a fatal mistake. They've stretched their supply lines. They've trusted Romanian and Hungarian allies to guard their flanks. And they've underestimated the Soviet plan. On November 19th, 1942, the Red Army launches Operation Uranus. Not at the city itself, but at its sides. Soviet tanks and infantry smash into the weakly defended flanks. They push forward relentlessly, circling around the city, until just 4 days later, the German 6th Army is trapped. 300,000 men are encircled. Paulus pleads for permission to break out. Hitler refuses. He tells them to hold, to wait. The Luftwaffe will supply them by air, but it doesn't work. The German troops inside the city begin to starve. They eat bread made with sawdust, then the horses, then dogs, then nothing. Frostbite spreads, ammo runs low, and the Soviets close in block by block. By January, it's over. The Soviets split the German pocket in two. There is no hope. Paulus is promoted to Field Marshal, a title no German has ever surrendered with. But he does. On February 2nd, 1943, he gives up. Nazi propaganda had called Stalingrad the gateway to Soviet collapse. Instead, it becomes the graveyard of 200,000 German soldiers. Only 5,000 would ever see home again. Stalingrad changes everything. It's no longer a war for conquest. Now it's survival. Now the Red Army is coming. Stronger, angrier, determined to march all the way to Berlin. And the Eastern Front is just getting started. It's now 1943. Germany has lost at Stalingrad. But Hitler refuses to admit defeat. He believes he can still win. One more decisive blow. One more grand offensive. The target? A bulge in the Soviet line near the city of Kursk. And here, the largest tank battle in human history is about to begin. The Germans call it Operation Citadel. They bring nearly 3,000 tanks, including the new Tiger and Panther models, thicker armor, heavier guns, slower but deadly. The Soviets, however, know it's coming. They've cracked German codes, they've seen the buildup, and so they prepare. For months, the Soviets dig. They lay over 1 million mines. They build anti-tank ditches, trenches, bunkers. Civilians are evacuated. Thousands of miles of barbed wire stretch across the land. When the Germans finally attack in July 1943, they slam into a wall. The fields explode. Mines detonate under panzer treads. T-34s roll forward in waves. Anti-tank guns fire from tree lines. Artillery pounds both sides. And above it all, the skies fill with smoke and flame. Dogfights, bombers, tracer fire. At the Battle of Prokhorovka, tanks collide at point-blank range. Crews fire at silhouettes through smoke and dust. Some battles are fought with grenades and pistols after tanks ram each other and catch fire. The Germans cannot break through. Their new tanks break down. Fuel runs low, and after just over a week, Hitler cancels the operation. He pulls troops to defend Italy, where the Allies have landed. And in the east, the initiative is now Soviet. Permanently, the Red Army advances. They take Orel, Kharkov, Kiev. Every town is a wreck, burned, booby-trapped, bodies buried in shallow graves. But they keep pushing. The Soviet war machine has learned. It's larger, faster, more ruthless. And for the German soldier, hope is fading. No more belief in final victory, no more supplies, no more replacements, just mud, retreat, and fear. By the end of 1943, the tide has turned. The Red Army is on the move, westward. They've reclaimed thousands of miles. Cities once lost in 1941 now fall back under the hammer and sickle. But something has changed. This isn't just a war for survival anymore. Now, it's a war of vengeance. What the Red Army discovers as they push west is horror, mass graves, burned villages, eyewitnesses too broken to speak, entire populations erased. And the soldiers take it personally. Their families gone, their homes destroyed, their people slaughtered. They carry these memories with every step. In Ukraine, in Belarus, in Poland, they burn back what was burned before. German prisoners are sometimes executed on the spot. Women who collaborated are shaved and beaten. Civilians accused of helping the occupiers face summary punishment. The front isn't clean, it's not surgical, it's raw emotion, wrapped in a red flag and carried by men who have nothing left to lose. And for the Germans, the retreat is chaos. Train lines are bombed. Fuel is scarce. Discipline begins to break. The Waffen-SS tries to enforce order with fear, but even the fear is wearing thin. The Eastern Front is collapsing, one corpse at a time. In January 1944, the siege of Leningrad ends. After 872 days, the city still stands, barely. Over 1 million civilians dead from starvation, disease, cold. But they endured. And now, they're free. Through the Baltics, across the Dnieper, the Red Army marches, thousands of tanks, millions of men, and as they push west, they prepare for their final destination, Berlin. But between them and the Nazi capital lies one more nightmare, Warsaw, and the death camps. By 1944, the Red Army had fought its way across a continent. From the ashes of Stalingrad, through the wreckage of Kursk, across rivers, forests, and ruined cities, they now stood at the edge of Poland. And there, they began to uncover what no one truly believed. Until they saw it, Majdanek was the first. Near Lublin, it wasn't hidden, it wasn't evacuated in time. The Germans thought they had more days, maybe weeks. But the Soviet advance was too fast. What the Red Army found were gas chambers, piles of shoes, stacks of bones, ovens still warm. It wasn't a rumor anymore. It wasn't propaganda. It was real. Then came Sobibor, Treblinka, Auschwitz, each worse than the last. They found barracks barely still standing, hair shaved and bagged, tattoos on corpses, ashes dumped into ponds. The Red Army filmed it. They documented it. But the soldiers were never the same after what they saw. Some grew quiet, others grew violent, and many became colder than the snow they marched through. In Warsaw, hope rose. The Polish underground launched an uprising in August 1944, just as the Red Army approached. They thought help was coming. They thought Soviet tanks would cross the Vistula River and join the fight. But the help never came. The Soviets stopped. They waited and watched. Some say it was logistical. The Red Army was too stretched, too exhausted. Others say it was political. The uprising wasn't pro-communist, so Stalin let the Nazis crush it. For 63 days, the people of Warsaw fought, home by home, block by block. But they were alone. German troops leveled entire districts. Civilians were executed in the thousands, hospitals bombed, children shot in the streets, and still, no Soviet advance. By October, the uprising was over, and Warsaw, one of Europe's great capitals, was turned to dust. The Red Army would later take the city. But by then, there was nothing left to save. For many in Eastern Europe, liberation came with grief and questions that would never be answered. It's early 1945. The Red Army has crossed into Germany. The war that began in the fields of Ukraine, in the ruins of Stalingrad, in the forests outside Moscow, has now reached the heart of the Reich. And with every step, the air gets colder, not with snow, but with rage. They see the signs on every road, villages speaking German, churches untouched, people watching quietly from behind curtains. And the soldiers remember what they saw in the east, the burned homes, the dead children, the pits of ash and bone. Now, they are the fire. The Red Army moves fast, too fast sometimes. Tanks outrun their supply lines. Infantry sleep in ditches. But they don't stop. In January, they reach the Oder River, just 50 miles from Berlin. The Americans and British are still in the west, slowed by the Ardennes and the Rhine. But in the east, nothing holds the Soviets back. The Germans launch desperate counterattacks. Old men and boys are drafted. Volkssturm units, barely armed, face Soviet tanks with rifles from World War I. SS units dig in around villages. Fighting becomes fanatical. Some towns change hands 3-4 times. And in the middle are civilians. The Red Army doesn't always distinguish. Many are raped, many are killed, some are spared, others not. It's brutal, raw, revenge with no rules. The war has eaten away the edges of morality. Now there is only survival. By April 1945, the Soviets encircle Berlin. The once proud capital is now a fortress. Hitler orders every man, woman, and child to fight. Boys are given Panzerfausts and told to aim for tank treads. Civilians dig trenches with bare hands. Propaganda blasts over loudspeakers. The Führer will lead us to victory. But even the loyal know it's over. The Battle of Berlin begins. Street by street, block by block, artillery shells fall like rain. Flames rise into the night. Smoke turns the sky black at noon. The Soviets advance behind tanks and flamethrowers. Buildings collapse. Corpses pile in stairwells. Machine guns rattle behind piano wire strung across boulevards. In the Führer bunker, Hitler refuses to leave. His generals lie. Reports are falsified. Maps mean nothing now. Everything is rubble. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler shoots himself in the head. By May 2nd, Berlin surrenders. And on May 9th, the war in Europe is over. But the victory doesn't feel like one. 27 million Soviets are dead. Entire cities no longer exist. Generations gone. For the survivors of the Eastern Front, German and Soviet alike, there is no celebration. Just silence and ash and memories that never leave. The guns fall silent. May 1945. Berlin is rubble. Europe is scarred. The Eastern Front is quiet. For the first time in nearly 4 years. No one is advancing. No one is retreating. No one is dying. But the silence is not peace. It's something else, something colder. The Soviet Union buries its dead. 27 million. Entire towns are gone, whole generations erased, from the forests of Belarus to the plains of Ukraine to the factories of Leningrad. The Red Army is hailed as liberators, but liberation soon becomes occupation. In Eastern Europe, a new power rises. Poland, Romania, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, the Baltics. Red flags go up. Local governments vanish. KGB offices open. The NKVD, the secret police, take over former Gestapo buildings. The iron grip tightens. Churches close. Books are banned. Dissent is crushed. And in Berlin, where the smoke still rises, a wall begins to form. Not of stone, not yet, but of ideology. East versus West. Red versus blue. Soviet versus American. The Allies meet in Yalta. They shake hands. They toast to victory. But behind the smiles are maps. Lines being drawn. Countries being divided. Worlds being built in opposition. The war is over, but the tension is just beginning. The Allies go home, but the Soviets stay, and the West begins to realize they didn't just win a war, they unleashed something new, something more dangerous, more patient, more silent. In the East, barbed wire stretches across fields. Watchtowers rise. And somewhere behind the ruins of Berlin, a whisper begins to echo. The next war won't be fought with tanks. It'll be fought with secrets, with spies, with walls, with fear. The Cold War has begun.